National Assembly discusses solving bad debts. And Vietnam-Japan development prospects on trade, economic and investment. Welcome to another edition of BizLine. You're with me, Hoàng Hằng, and as usual, we will begin with some economic highlights over the past week. Prime Minister Nguyễn Xuân Phúc attended the largest ever Vietnam's investment promotion conference on June the 5th in Tokyo, Japan, during his official visit to the country. At the event, 3 investment certifications were granted, including a $2.8 billion contract for Nghi Sơn 2 power plant, Eon Mall in Hanoi's Hà Đông district, and the Sakura Golf project in Hải Phòng. 36 memorandums between the two countries on various business deals were also signed, according to the Japan External Trade Organization. And we will have an in-depth discussion of the topic in our crosstalk. Now, moving on to other news, on Wednesday morning, the National Assembly spent time discussing its resolution on solving bad debts and the draft amendment on the law on credit institutions. For the resolution on solving bad debts, most deputies agree that the state budget is not allowed to solve bad debts and specify responsibilities of organizations and individuals that cause bad debts. Deputies also said that allowing banks to solve bad debts based on collateral is reasonable because many borrowers are in jail or escape after getting loans. In addition, deputies also approved the regulation on allowing credit institutions to sell bad debts for prices lower or higher than the values on loan contracts. Vietnam has climbed up 5 places to rank 6 in the Global Retail Development Index by the US A.T. Kearney Company, released on June the 5th. This year, Vietnam rank in the index follows big markets such as India, China, Malaysia, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates, and surpassing Indonesia, Thailand, and Kazakhstan. This shows that Vietnam continues to attract foreign investors. The Global Retail Development Index is announced annually with rankings of 30 developing countries in terms of retail investment attraction. The assessment is done by A.T. Kearney Company based on 25 factors in macroeconomy and retail. Export turnover in the first 5 months of this year is estimated to reach $79.3 billion, up 17.4% over the same period last year, according to the Ministry of Industry and Trade. This is seen as a momentum to raise export turnover of the whole country toward the end of the year. Export commodities that have higher prices are rubber, coal, crude oil, coffee, and cashews. These products have earned more than $627 million. After 5 months, 17 export items exceeded $1 billion. Statistics show that the Asian market has had the highest increases, estimated at $40.17 billion, up 25% over the same period last year, followed by the European and American markets. The first batch of lychee exports to Australia of 2017 finished irradiation in Hanoi on June the 4th. The batch comprised of 1.2 tons of lychee, which came from the Red Dragon Company and was harvested in Thanh Hà District, Hải Dương Province. The products have been tested with no residue of pesticides in accordance with Australian standards. The lychee will be exported to Australia through Nội Bài International Airport. This is a good sign for northern fruit companies. The lychees are irradiated in Hanoi to save time and costs of up to $440 per ton compared to shipping to southern Vietnam for irradiation. The Ho Chi Minh City's People Committee has notified the Ministry of Construction that it agrees with the ministry's master plan to boost capacity by up to 40% at the Tân Sơn Nhất International Airport. According to the master plan, the Tân Sơn Nhất Airport would add a runway and a terminal with a capacity of 15 million passengers. In addition, an airplane parking and technical maintenance area will allow the airport to welcome 43 to 45 million passengers each year. the city has required the Ministry of Transport to ask the Prime Minister to allow them to adjust the open traffic around the airport to meet the demand of those passengers. It also requested information from the ministry about managing the impact the expansion will have on urban traffic after the airport is successfully expanded by 2024. Those are the economic highlights over the past week. Up next is the development cooperations of Vietnam and Japan in terms of trade, economic and investment in our crosstalk. Prime Minister Nguyễn Xuân Phúc concluded his official visit to Japan at the invitation of Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on June the 8th. During the visit, the Vietnamese and Japanese Prime Ministers agree on major orientation and specific measures to strengthen bilateral ties in a more comprehensive, practical and effective manner. This is expected to create a momentum for both nations going forward in economic, trade and investment. In this week's Bizline program, we had a chance to talk with Mr. Hironobu Kitagawa, Chief Representative of Japan's External Trade Organization or JETRO Hanoi office, about Vietnam-Japan economic ties and investment prospects. But first, let's review some highlights from the recent visit of Prime Minister Nguyễn Xuân Phúc to Japan over the past week.
Prime Minister Nguyễn Xuân Phúc left Hanoi on June the 4th for a 5-day official visit to Japan and attend the 23rd International Conference on the Future of Asia. During the visit, the Vietnamese and Japanese Prime Ministers noted with satisfaction the robust, comprehensive and substantial growth of the Vietnam-Japan relationship in all areas since its upgrade to the extensive strategic partnership in 2014. Bilateral economic, trade and investment ties have expanded significantly, helping to promote the connectivity between the two economies. According to the Japan External Trade Organization, 36 memorandums between the two countries on various business deals were also signed during the visit of the Vietnamese Prime Minister. The total value of the investment certificates, economic contracts, and memorandum of cooperation topped $21 billion.
Thank you so much for joining our interview. Now, as Prime Minister Nguyễn Xuân Phúc concluded his visit to Japan just a few days ago, what can you tell us about the outcome of this visit in terms of trade and investment for both nations?
確かに良い結果は生まれると思いますね。で、今回副首相が
I think Vietnamese Prime Minister Nguyễn Xuân Phoc's visit and his attendance at the Investment Promotion Conference, together with other officials and enterprises, will bolster economic, trade, investment relations between the two countries. We understand that the Vietnamese government and enterprises have high hopes for investment from their Japanese counterparts. The outcomes of Prime Minister Nguyễn Xuân Phoc's recent visit are very positive, and it will continue to. In the future, trade relations between the two countries are expected to expand. The Vietnamese market is rapidly expanding with huge purchasing power. That is why Japanese businesses have expanded their investments into many non-traditional industries such as services, hospitality, and logistics. These are sectors that do not require a large amount of investment capital as compared to manufacturing. Trade activities are not restricted between business to business, but have expanded to business to consumer and consumer to consumer. With such changes, Japanese enterprises can focus their resources in developing new sectors such as logistics and retail market. In the past, Japanese enterprises in Vietnam invested mostly in traditional sectors such as manufacturing and production. In recent times, many enterprises have been interested in other fields such as industrial sectors, service, retail, and restaurants. The conference opens more investment and trade opportunities for the Japanese enterprises that would like to do business in Vietnam and vice versa.
されると思います。
Several Vietnamese enterprises are investing in the IT sector in Japan.
ということもあると思いますね。それはベトナム
We hope that there will be more investments into this sector, as Vietnamese IT enterprises are good enough to promote investment in other countries, including Japan.
もあるし、すでにいくつか
Japan hopes to welcome Vietnamese IT firms.
この動きというのは伸びていくんではないかなというふうに考えています。
What do you think are the highlights of the Vietnam-Japan economic and investment ties over the past decades?
ベトナムと日本との経済の投資というのは
I believe highlights in Vietnam and Japan's economic and investment relations over the past several years have been in manufacturing and infrastructure development fields. In the future, the two countries can focus on the agriculture sector.
思うんですね。それは例えば
Japan has an advanced agricultural sector with high quality and safe standards, while Vietnam has great potential in this sector.
注目しがちだったと思うんですが、これからですね、例えば農業
In addition, the fisheries sector can be a promising sector to promote trade between Vietnam and Japan. As Japan has advanced agricultural and seafood processing techniques, we think it is possible to introduce this technology to Vietnam and help with its application in order to improve product quality and develop the Vietnam's fisheries and agriculture sectors.
というのはありますので、これをそのベトナムの皆さんにご紹介をする。
I think both sides can cooperate in the primary sectors such as agriculture, forestry, and fishery. Japan has invested in the manufacturing industry in Vietnam for a long time. In the future, Vietnam and Japan can work on technology innovation and develop industries such as agriculture and services. I think Vietnam and Japan will have an all-rounded cooperation in all aspects, including the primary, secondary, and tertiary sectors. We can help Vietnam develop its value chain to promote value-added products in the future.
技術協力がきちんとできて、そして三次産業の部分
We hope that we can help Vietnam create agricultural value chains. Those will be some of the highlights in Vietnam and Japan's investment cooperation in the time to come.
し、おそらくそのような方向に向かっていくんではないかなというふうに考えています。
Prime Minister Nguyễn Phúc attended the largest ever Vietnam Investment Promotion Conference on June the 5th in Tokyo, Japan, during his official visit to the country. The conference drew the participation of about 1,400 Japanese businesses and 200 Vietnamese firms. Addressing the conference, Prime Minister Nguyễn Phúc quoted a recent report by Japanese External Trade Organization. About 90% of Japanese firms believed that investing in Vietnam would help them increase revenue as well as Vietnam's investment environment had improved. He stressed that Vietnam was committed to completing the legal system and putting in place policies to support investors.
Doanh nghiệp đã làm ăn Việt Nam họ đều mong muốn là bãi bỏ cái hoặc là sửa lại quyết định số 23 của chính phủ về vấn đề nhập thiết bị cũ vào Việt Nam. Tôi ghi nhận ý kiến đó. Hay một số chính sách về thuế khóa, vấn đề thủ tục. Ví dụ như vấn đề mà bà Sato có nêu, người nước ngoài phải mua bảo hiểm Việt Nam lần đến lần thứ hai, thì điều này chúng tôi thấy không cần thiết và phải tiếp thu ý kiến này. Ở Việt Nam thì cái gì nó phải thì người ta nghe thôi. Chính phủ, thủ tướng chính phủ thì lắng nghe cái này để sửa một cái để tạo môi trường thông lệ quốc tế và thông thoáng, tạo điều kiện các nhà đầu tư.
Speaking at the conference, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe stressed the significant growth in bilateral relations between Japan and Vietnam.
When I had a chance to discuss with Prime Minister Nguyễn Phúc this January, he listened to the opinions of Japanese businesses very carefully and even solved many of the issues. I hope Prime Minister Nguyễn Phúc will continue to support Japanese firms. We see Vietnam as among the most important partners in the TPP. Prime Minister Phúc and I will continue to support the two countries' businesses to cooperate.
At the event, 3 investment certifications were granted, including a $2.8 billion contract for Nghi Sơn 2 power plant, Eon Mall in Hanoi's Hà Đông district, and the Sakura Golf project in Haiphong. Meeting with leaders of over 30 leading Japanese businesses at a later event, Vietnamese Prime Minister Nguyễn Phúc called for Japanese businesses to further invest in Vietnam's high-tech agriculture, information and technology. The Japanese enterprises highly valued Vietnam's investment environment, but also made some proposals which were related to land regulations, tax payment, human resource management, development of information technology, and high-tech agriculture.
The investment conference as part of the Prime Minister's visit to Japan saw the signing of many trade deals. How would this impact the trade ties between Vietnam and Japan?
今回はですね、覚書の締結が実に36件。
Witnessed by the two prime ministers, the two sides enterprises signed a total of 36 cooperation agreements with a total value of up to 21 billion US dollars. This will surely boost the development of both sides' firms, as well as further their wishes for cooperation. This is a step forward in expressing Vietnam and Japan cooperation commitments in writing, thus creating more solid results in the future. The Japanese business community is very much impressed with the efforts of the Vietnamese firms in attracting investment from Japan. I think many people shared my impression. As such, many Japanese firms are considering their investment plan, and we expect to see a rise in Japanese investment plan into Vietnam.
Following the meeting with Prime Minister Nguyễn Phúc, do you think Japanese firms are more optimistic about the investment environment in Vietnam?
覚書を36件結んで、これをですね。
The signing ceremony attracted the participation of more than 1,000 enterprises and senior officials from both sides. It certainly brings more development opportunities for both countries. Japanese enterprises coming to this conference had their inquiries answered. The Vietnamese Prime Minister talked about Vietnam's business environment, and so Japanese firms felt more optimistic and interested in investing in Vietnam. Japanese firms that witnessed the signing ceremony felt the commitment from both enterprises and governments in boosting and attracting investment. I think this conference is a stepping stone for both sides.
Recent statistics have shown that Japan is now the second largest investor in Vietnam, with a total capital of 41 billion US dollars. It is said that a new wave of investment from Japan to Vietnam is now rising. This Japanese company has begun providing IT infrastructure and solutions in Vietnam after more than 10 years investing here.
Actually, our business is based on the outsourcing business so far. However, we are aiming to change.
More than half of newly licensed projects by Japanese investors are in the fields of consultation, retail, and information technology. Through merger and acquisitions, Japanese investment funds and domestic real estate developers have invested millions of US dollars in joint projects.
We are strong in terms of finance and management, but we do not have the advantage in accessing land resources or gaining insight into the market, so we cooperate with domestic businesses to enhance competitiveness.
2016 witnessed a record number of Japanese invested projects in Vietnam with a total investment capital of 2.1 billion US dollars. The figure even reached nearly 2 billion US dollars during the first 5 months of this year.
Big companies from Japan have invested in Vietnam. Now is the time for SMEs in the fields of services and consumer goods.
This trend is becoming more evident as a number of big Japanese retail companies have entered Vietnam, such as Family Mart at Aeon. This June, another big name, 7-Eleven, will also set foot in Vietnam with the first 5 stores to be opened in Ho Chi Minh City. Vietnam, with a market of more than 90 million people and good political stability, continues to be an attractive destination for Japanese investors.
Japan is the largest ODA donor to Vietnam and also the second largest investor to the nation. So what have been the major trend in terms of trade and investment?
ODA の部分はこれまでもインフラの部分ですね。橋であったり、あるいは
Japan is Vietnam's largest ODA provider in the field of infrastructure development, as well as other sectors such as service. However, according to a survey conducted by JETRO, the direct investment in manufacturing is dropping. Japanese enterprises are expanding investment in the service sector. Enterprises in this field expressed their wish to expand investment in Vietnam. In the future, I think both countries need more discussions to identify potential fields of cooperation for both sides. As far as I know, the Vietnamese government wants support from Japan in their supporting industry. Yet, this industry covers a wide range of areas. Through the Vietnam-Japan Joint Initiative, as well as discussions between the two sides, I hope that Vietnam will propose specific areas in the supporting industry. That way, Japan can pinpoint Vietnam's demand and explore prospects for cooperation in fields where both sides wish to further collaboration.
According to statistics, two-way trade turnover between Vietnam and Japan reached $30 billion, where the goods between Vietnam and Japan are believed to be complementary and non-competitive. So do you think this structure will change in the future?
確かにですね、日本とベトナムの輸出入額が同額になってきたというのは
Vietnam and Japan have relatively balanced trade, but we should take a look at the export commodities of the two countries. Vietnamese exports to Japan are mainly textile and garment, components of transporting machinery, mechanical equipment, and fishery products. Meanwhile, Japanese exports to Vietnam are mainly computers, electronics and spare parts, and automobile accessories. There's a difference between export commodities of the two countries. This is why trade relations between the two countries are complementary. Both countries are capable of importing value-added products, which might bring a breath of fresh air to this complementary trade relation. This, in turn, will further develop Vietnam's economy. Vietnam can continue to export its aquatic products, which is one of its strengths, to Japan, while Japan can export reliable agricultural products to Vietnam. Both sides can therefore enhance their merchantability to support each other. The value-added products will help prosper the trade relations of the two countries.
Bilateral trade between Vietnam and Japan had experienced an impressive growth rate of 13.9% annually over the past 10 years. Vietnam-Japan trade topped over $28 billion in 2015, making up 8.7% of Vietnam's total import-export value. According to the latest statistics from the General Department of Vietnam Customs, as of the end of April 2017, the total import and export turnover between Vietnam and Japan reached over $10 billion, with trade relations maintained at a relatively balanced level. During the recent visit of Prime Minister Thúc to Japan, both leaders shared the intention to promote their bilateral trade cooperation, striving to realize the goal of doubling two-way trade and investment to $60 billion from 2014 till 2020.
Vietnam-Japan trade is expected to reach $60 billion by 2020. So do you think this is an achievable target based on the current development?
達成はできるのではないかなというふうに考えています。
With the current growth, trade turnover between Vietnam and Japan can reach its target of $60 billion. However, in order to achieve this, the two countries should not only focus on traditional products or manufacturing sectors. Both countries will not only rely mainly on the manufacturing sector, but also on the agriculture sector and services. Creating value-added chains for these products is crucial, and hopefully this will become the starting point for a new industrial revolution in Vietnam and Japan.
As the U.S. has withdrawn from TPP, what are the steps forward for Japan and Vietnam in the implementation of this trade deal?
We understand that Vietnam pays special attention and places high hopes on the free trade agreements such as RCEP and TPP. We can see that because Vietnam is really active in expanding free trade with other countries. Though the U.S. has withdrawn from the TPP, Vietnam and Japan still have plenty of ongoing activities and agreements to expand their cooperation scope. For instance, this November, the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit will convene in Vietnam. Such events will benefit trade between Vietnam and Japan, as well as other countries.
Thank you so much for joining our interview.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Both Vietnam and Japan share important common perceptions on deepening the Vietnam-Japan extensive strategic partnership across many fields, as stressed by the two leaders in this visit. Japan, with its advanced technologies and experience, would contribute to building high-quality infrastructure, improving the investment environment, and developing human resources in Vietnam. Meanwhile, Vietnamese Prime Minister Nguyễn Xuân Phúc affirmed the government's determination to effectively use Japanese ODA, build a transparent investment environment, and create optimal conditions for Japanese investors. With such determination, bilateral ties is expected to thrive in the coming time. And that also wraps up this edition of BizLine. You can always log on to vtv4.vn or youtube.com/vtv4go for more of our program and updates. For now, goodbye from Hanoi.